Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Rebel News live stream show. It is Tuesday, July 28, 2020, and I am David Menzies, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host somewhere in northern Alberta. That would be Sheila Gunn-Reid. And normally at this time, you do see the big boss man himself, Ezra Levant, in this chair, but Ezra's working on some special projects. So for the foreseeable future, Sheila and I, every Tuesday and Thursday, are hosting the live stream, and and sometimes we have other people pop in. Like last week, I was doing it all week long. In addition to Sheila Gunn-Reid, I had High Energy Andrew for one day, and I think the first super chat was, "Where is Ezra? This is boring." So, yeah. As long as you're paying, folks, you can say whatever you want. And I think, Sheila, this is where you chime in and tell the audience what it is we're hoping to achieve here.
Yes. And first off, I want to apologize for my internet difficulties last week. And I want to thank Andrew for subbing in so fast and stepping into my role of ribbing David the whole time so well. I want to thank everybody at home for their patience with my internet connection. And yesterday I did watch the live stream, as I tend to do. I sort of have it on in the background when I'm working. And I know that some of you express concern that I don't have a good enough internet connection. And that very well may be true, because this is northeastern Alberta, and we're sort of the forgotten lands when it comes to internet connection. Our internet comes to us by radio. It's not even satellite. It's not cellular. It's radio. And I do have the very best one that you can get. So like the best router, the best everything. And sometimes it's still just not good enough. However, I think some of my neighbors went back to work. So sometimes the internet connection gets a little better whenever, like in the dead of the middle of the day, when everybody else is off at their real jobs and I'm trying to work from home. So what are we doing? We are hosting the daily live stream. We used to only do it on Fridays, and that used to be Ezra hosting it on Fridays. But during the pandemic, there's just so much news going on. And our competitors, those in the mainstream media, they just aren't covering these issues. So we thought, you know what? Give the people what they want. They want more news. We're willing to give it to them. And so we extended the live streams to every single day of the week. And David and I, we host Tuesdays and Thursdays, which is fun. However, I don't think I'm hosting with you Thursday because I'm traveling that day for work. I have to fly back home. So might have to think about getting Andrew to sub in on that day. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, High Energy Andrew is always welcome here, Sheila. And yeah, thankfully he did sub in when you were freezing on Friday. And you're right, we are going to be talking about a whole raft of issues that the mainstream media can't be bothered to because it doesn't fit their narrative. We have the update on the two Michaels, the high-flying Patty, Sir John A. Macdonald's statue placed in a coffin, sanitized for your protection, and of course, the piece de la resistance. Since the carnivals don't have freak shows anymore, well, folks, we have the latest update on the Traveling Yaniv show, Jonathan and Mama Yaniv. And if you haven't seen the video that went up on the weekend on Rebel News, you are not going to believe this one. Eh, Sheila?
Oh, they never fail to disappoint. They act crazier every time you see them, and it's a real feast for the eyes, whatever they're doing there. And you know what? I know I should be telling people how to super chat us right now, but Jonathan Yaniv, I understand he wants to be a woman. He identifies as a woman, and that's fine. But I think he's younger than me. I think a lot of people are younger than me. I think half the world is younger than me. Why does he dress like a golden girl? If you want to be a lady, maybe. You know what? My advice to everybody, just dress age appropriate. He dresses like a golden girl, and I think that's because his only point of reference is his overbearing mother. And I think we should all be glad that he hasn't turned into a serial killer, because so many troubled men with overbearing mothers, that's where they go. Anyway, we sort of have to, let me just get the super chat issue out of the way, and then we'll just get right into the show.
Okay.
So if if you at home want to support the work that we do here at Rebel News, because we'll never take a dime from Justin Trudeau, we're not part of the bailout media, you can do something called a super chat. It's at the bottom of the very lively already live chat discussion. There's a little $sign. You can click on that, and depending on how much you throw in there, it'll highlight your comment for a certain amount of time. The more you give, the more characters you get. And if you have a topic that you want David or I to discuss, or a question you want us to answer, or, sometimes an insult, sometimes is directed at David, or if you want to embarrass me by getting me to say something embarrassing, that's fine. Your money's still good. So if you want to support the work that we do, that's one way to do it. And it's a very democratic way to do it, because if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. Again, not like the CBC.
Democracy, what's that? Okay, and Sheila, you don't have any super chats yet, I take it, so...
No, I do. I have a few, but I thought I'd give you a chance to say something smart there. And
and I failed.
I was going to... You said it, not me. Okay, let's put on the spectacles so I can read this. Okay, Mike Seguin gives us $20.99, says, I spent the Prime Minister's money and the Finance Minister's money like they spent ours. I'd be thrown in jail. Yeah, no kidding. And... that's the problem. There's no teeth in these ethics laws. No. It's $500 no matter how many violations you make, and it's generally a bunch of millionaires enriching other millionaires making ethics violations. So how is that a deterrent for anything? I think it should be treated more harshly than fraud, really, because these people are in a position of public trust.
Absolutely.
And they basically get a slap on the wrist, like a very expensive speeding ticket is all it is for these people. You know
what else is disturbing, Sheila, is that, Justin Trudeau has so little credibility, at least in my eyes, as a leader. But the so-called adult in the room in that cabinet was always supposed to be Bill Morneau, who probably has aspirations one day to become Prime Minister himself. That's what sources tell me. And look how he's acting. Here's a multi-millionaire already found guilty on one ethics violation. Oops, I forgot the chateau in France I was supposed to declare.
Hate it when that happens.
Yeah, Sheila, don't you hate it when you lose track of all your chateaus around the planet, right?
Darn it.
And the fact that he would pocket $41K, which is probably the amount of loonies and toonies at the Morneau sofa that's fallen in between the cracks. Yep. It's just, it reminds me of that James Bond title, The World Is Not Enough. It's never enough for these people. I mean, there's no limits on their insatiable thirst for power and money.
You know who I feel the worst for in the Liberal cabinet, I really don't feel all that bad for him, because he has the opportunity to be more vocal than he is about what's going on around him, is Marc Garneau. Accomplished man, scientist, astronaut. He had aspirations of being the leader of the party, probably would have taken the party in a much different direction. However, the party rejected the astronaut for the space cadet and chose Justin Trudeau. And he's got to watch all these ethics violations just unfold all around him. And he probably is the most grown-up individual in the party. And, like I say, I sort of feel bad for him, but he has the opportunity to be an ethical man, and instead he chooses to be silent as this all unfolds.
Yeah, but you know what, Sheila? When I tried to scrub Marc Garneau last September, when we were doing our across-Canada election coverage, I went to his campaign office. He was having some kind of a tea and pastry event. And he ran for the hills. He wouldn't accept one question from me. It was just like he got into his rocket ship again and went to the moon or Uranus or wherever. Uh-oh, my trouble again. Please read a super chat.
To the super chat. Okay, Nicholas Wiseman gives us $2 Canadian and says, hello, how are you? I think David and I were great until about 30 seconds ago.
It's the name of a planet.
Oh, I know. Abu Baker, Elpuff Daddy, gives us $10 Canadian, says, morning, Gunny and Menzoy. David, I love your live streams with Andrew, says, a.k.a. El Chapo. Also, Kian is awesome. Gunny, a fellow Rebel Yahoo suggested an all-girl panel. You and Drea. What say you? I think that's fun. And I also think that, and I haven't talked to her yet, so I'm just sort of dropping this bomb right in the middle of today's live stream, is for my weekly paywalled show, it would be nice to have a discussion with Drea, because my weekly paywalled show is more like a podcast format. It's sort of informal, and you just sort of see where the conversation takes you. It's aptly called The Gun Show. Maybe I have my show planned for this week, but maybe she'll come on next week and we'll have like a discussion and talk about sort of her first month here at Rebel News. And for those of you at home who aren't subscribers to our paywalled show, you can go to rebelnews.com/subscribe to become a member. It's only $8 a month, and you get access to my show, which I try to have on sort of underreported newsmakers and people who are really smart about the issues I care about, like climate change and the United Nations and municipal tax dollar gobblers. And you also get access to David's show. That's on Friday. And I like David's show because it's fun and also informal. And you get to hear us talking about the stories that we did all week. And sometimes David says crazy things, but it's behind a paywall, so it's not so bad. And of course, Ezra's nightly Ezra Levant show.
Yeah, and Mr. Producer chimed in there with, if you don't recognize me, that's because it's a really old picture. Not that old. Anyway, but Sheila, with this all-girl panel that was proposed, what about me, resuming my alter ego persona of Lady Menzoid when I had to get into that Sharia swimming pool. It fooled those people. It might fool the audience.
Did she fool them? Also, when you voted in the burqa.
Oh, yes.
With the matching purse and the gloves. And you used the high-pitched voice for some reason.
Oh, you mean like this? Oh, it's just to get in touch with my femininity, Sheila Gunn-Reid.
You sound like Homer Simpson when he pretends to be a lady. Okay, let's move on. Tater salad or tater salad gives us 50 Denmark. What is the Denmark money? Kroners?
Think so.
Yeah. Greetings from Denmark. Never stop poking the bear. We won't. David poked it about a minute and a half ago when he suggested that we should all go to Uranus. MEC gives us $3. Free Speech Warriors. Thank you. Capa de Seo gives us 22 not North Korean. I almost said it again. Norwegian crown. Is it the crown? Kroner? Crown? I think it's crown. You correct. Yeah, krone. Okay, perfect. And
that's the name of the currency. I wasn't making any kind of insult. Sheila, go ahead.
That's what I call Hillary Clinton. The Yanives should be returned to their star system. No. I think actually the Yanives are from our planet, and they're probably the reason that the aliens just breeze right by.
Yeah.
Lesbian Towel gives us $5. How much do I have to pay you guys to read erotic Jessica Yaniv fan fiction on the live stream?
Oh my God. That exists?
Tell me that doesn't exist. Tell me. Adam Clark gives us $6.99. We missed you, Sheila. David as well. Julian Borges. Thoughts on how to tackle homelessness addiction? Oh, that's a big question. I think homelessness and addiction, there's an underlying issue to both of those things, and it's mental illness. Yep. So for a lot of homeless people that you see homeless, it's not that there aren't services available to them. It's not that there isn't shelter space available to them. It's that they are so poorly behaved because of their mental illness that they can't be in those shelters. And then on the flip side, a lot of these people, unfortunately, are self-medicating with drugs and alcohol because they have a mental illness. And a lot of times it's the side effects for psychotropic medication and psychiatric medication, they're pretty bad. And so the people don't want to take them. And then on the other hand, you start feeling better because you've been taking medication, and then you convince yourself that you're cured, and then you go off your medication, then you start drinking when you're feeling manic, and then you start doing marijuana when you're, or you start doing meth when you're feeling low, and then you end up in this vicious cycle, and you end up on the street, and your life falls apart. And I think to tackle homelessness and addiction, you have to tackle the underlying issue of mental illness.
No, Sheila, you're quite right. And you nailed it with the self-medicating part. I mean, this is a problem that really dates back to the 60s and 70s when we started to deinstitutionalize mental health patients. The idea was to offload the costs because it's very expensive, much like running a penitentiary. And the idea is that there was new drugs on the market, and as long as they self-medicate, what's the problem? Well, you can see the fatal flaw. It's what happens when they don't self-medicate and they go down that spiral you so adroitly described. And I'm sorry, once upon a time we had asylums. It was for their protection and ours as a general society. Now you just go to where I was yesterday to see the dismantling of Dufferin Grove Park, and it really is an asylum without walls. There are just whacked out crazy people now occupying parkland in Canada, and the authorities are too constrained by political correctness to lay down the law and do anything about it. And it's not good for them, and it's certainly not good for law-abiding, tax-paying citizens.
Well, yeah, and it's funny because they basically swung open the asylum doors because the prevailing sentiment at the time is that the asylums were inhumane. Well, are the results of swinging open those asylum doors any better when you have your desperately mentally ill now sleeping in parks and living just a terribly marginal lifestyle? If the problem is that asylums were inhumane, well, why didn't we make them better? Why didn't we make them more stimulating and at least less like a prison for mentally ill people? Why didn't we do something about that? Now we have all these mentally ill people living on the street, and I think a lot of these people, definitely their quality of life is suffering, but there are people who could be functional members of society if they just took their medicine, and they're not.
Exactly.
Okay, let's keep going. That was a big question for a $2 super chat. Abu Baker El Buff Daddy, you got your money's worth. $5. Gunny and Menzoid. Yesterday, Ezra proposed a rebel road trip to Nova Scotia. What genre of music would you like to hear on that trip? To Nova Scotia. I don't know. Am I going to have to listen to Eastern music, like Eastern Canada music? Or can I bring my Alberta sensibilities on the road trip and make all of our Toronto staff suffer through that? That's the question. David, what would be on your playlist?
I would play Carly Simon's You're So Vain, in which she actually mentions the province of Nova Scotia. How do you like that, Sheila Gunn-Reid?
My playlist would be rife with Waylon Jennings, Ian Tyson, not when Ian and Sylvia days. I don't know. I just don't care for any of that. But I would have to keep it real and represent Alberta on my road trip across the country. And I actually hope that trial does go forward, because I think we should cover it like the OJ trial. Like, I think we should be doing hits on the street. I think we should just cover it as big and wonderfully as we can. Not a banned account gives us $1.99. What's the point of ethics censures? Nothing happens. Yeah, exactly. Nothing happens. There's not enough of a financial deterrent to it. I think once you're found guilty of an ethics violation, you should be banned from running for public office for re-election for an extended period of time. You should have to sit out 5 years or one election cycle or whatever.
I like that idea. Good one, Sheila.
Thank you. Gabriel Mainville gives us $10. David, I like it when you handle any hecklers when you ask them if they are able to articulate. By the way, how did you find that way to handle the situation?
Being married for almost 30 years.
Having kids. For me, it's having kids. You're mad at me, kids.
But thank you.
Why are you mad?
That was just a joke, of course. Really, my philosophy, and you see Ezra do it too when he goes out into the public square and gets to see who's who in the zoo, is the fact that what these people would relish, more than anything is for one of us rebel reporters to lose it, to have a meltdown where we start screaming, using profanity, throwing haymakers. They're always filming us. There's about 100 cell phone cameras on us at all time, and they would wear this as a badge of honor that they got us to get upset. So even though I might be a little perturbed under the surface, I'm not going to give them what they want. And by remaining stoic and by even adding humor to the situation, I think I turn it around to make them insane, because it's like, what do we have to do to make this guy lose it? Well, you haven't hit the point yet, my friends.
Well, and I think, too, there's also another aspect to this that people at home don't see. And I know for me, it's my interactions with other journalists. I know they really want to have this self-fulfilling prophecy about me. They think I'm crazy. They think I'm this far right-wing, radical, crazy person, that I'm abrasive and caustic and mean and like someone you can't have out in public, basically, and that I'm just this backwards hillbilly. Well, that part might be true. But, I try to govern my interactions with these people in a way that, I try to be so nice that it makes them uncomfortable. And honestly, I think, David, that I am that nice. But it's hard to be that way with people don't like you and they're expecting another reaction from you. I try to be as kind and as pleasant to my, I guess, enemies in the mainstream media as I would be with anybody who walked up to me on the street and said, "Hey, I love your work." And
Sheila, what's fascinating is the fact that those members of the mainstream media, the idea that they have this vision of you, this perception of you of being some far right ideologue, what that speaks to is how far left the mainstream media people are. That they don't understand somebody close to the center is actually a reasonable person, but is somebody to be condemned as being far right or alt-right or whatever they want to call it. That is staggering, because I have grown to know you over the years, and you are the most decent person anyone could ever want to have a conversation with. And the idea that they think that of you speaks about them being ideologues on the other side of the political spectrum.
Well, I think they don't realize that they are actually fulfilling a prophecy I have about them. And that's despite how I conduct myself and how I treat them, they're still going to turn around when they get on Twitter, get on Facebook, write their next story about something that we've done, that they will still, despite having personally interacted with me, write about me as though I'm what they think I am.
Wow.
And so that fulfills my prophecy about them, that they are so ideological that they just throw the humanity of it all in the garbage. Anyway, let's keep going because we're 22 minutes into the show and we actually have talked about nothing that was on our big long list of things to talk about. Teresa gives us $10 Canadian. RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lukey is married to Morneau's cousin, directly appointed by Trudeau. Do you think Prime Palace rat will be investigated? I don't think Justin Trudeau is going to be investigated. I don't know who Brenda Lukey's married to. I can neither confirm nor deny that. But I don't think it matters either way because Justin Trudeau is not going to be investigated for anything by the RCMP anyway. Fraser McBurney gives us $12. 2 years ago, I walked into my bank wearing a mask. I was accosted by the bank guard. On Friday, I walked into my bank not wearing a mask, and I was accosted by the bank guard. Look what happened in 2 years.
Isn't that the perfect story for this mental case year that is 2020, Sheila? You can't win. You wear a mask, you're a would-be robber. You don't wear a mask, you're a would-be spreader of the Wuhan virus. This is insane. What a story.
Well, and are you really, like when you go into the bank these days, the tellers are set up like they work at Subway. Like there's a sneeze guard, they've got gloves, hairnets. Like they look like they're going into an operating theater. And so, okay, fine, that whatever. But now you want me to wear a mask? Doesn't that make everybody less safe? Like, I don't want the burglars saying, "Oh, I'm going to throw a mask on and a hat and a hairnet, whatever, and come in." if I were a teller, I would be like, I don't want people wearing masks. That's fine. Put me behind the glass wall or whatever you need me to do. But I think for everybody's safety, they should not be wearing masks in a bank.
Well, Sheila, as I've always said about airport security, if you want to go through it super fast without being hassled and doing a striptease, wear a burqa or a niqab. And these days, with the Wuhan virus the way it is, same deal with going into a bank or other high security area where they want you masked. Wear that and you will have zero resistance. I'm telling you, that's the way to do it.
On the other hand, I don't know if you saw this story that we wrote up over the weekend. I know I'm supposed to get to all the stuff that we're... On the flip side, ladies in disguise, I guess, we wrote it up over the weekend. There was this van of nuns who were from Edmonton. I think 2 were from Brazil or 4 were from Poland or the other way around. Doesn't really matter. They're nuns. And they had been in Edmonton for quite some time, so they don't have to worry about quarantining or whatever. And they rented a van and they thought, we're going to go for a little northern BC coastal vacation. They go up to northern BC, they go to Mass and Kitimat. Like, this is a rental minivan full of nuns. The crazy people on social media were like sharing pictures of them cruising around northern BC saying, keep your kids inside. These are human traffickers. The nuns are coming to steal them. It got so bad that the parish priest, the local priest, I think in Terrace, wrote a letter to the editor saying, they're nuns. They were at Mass in Kitimat. I know them. They're on vacation from Edmonton. They came to do what nuns do, and that's drive around in minivans and look at God's creation. That's what nuns do when they have time off. And then he experienced the threats that the nuns were getting firsthand. Like, people were walking up to them and saying, I've heard you've been around town. And threatening them. It got so bad that the nuns just cut it short and came back to Edmonton to the archdiocese here. But and those people were like, well, even if they weren't child traffickers, the church is always up to something, so whatever. And they're posting this stuff openly. And I thought to myself, imagine if those were some otherwise religious ladies dressed a little different, driving around in a minivan. There would be the mainstream media hunting down those internet, Facebook busybodies and naming and shaming every single one of them. But because it's a bunch of Catholic nuns in a minivan who are having a picnic in a park and they get run out of town with threats and whatever, and nobody cares. It's just whatever. It's just something that gets on my radar and nobody else's.
It's unbelievable. Sheila, have you ever read such nonsense? See what I did there?
Let's keep going. John Day gives us $5 Canadian, says, will you be following the Conservative debate on True North this week? Ooh. Oh, we're not just following it. We're going to be there. It's going to be, the rebel flock will descend on that debate. And we're going to ask all the questions that you wish the mainstream media would ask politicians and things that you at home want to know and not what journalists want to know. We're going to ask those questions. We're all going to be there. We're going to live stream it with Ezra in studio, and then 5 rebel journalists from all over the country are going to descend on that debate. So while you might be watching it on True North, can I suggest that maybe you tune in over at Rebel News on our YouTube page and watch the live coverage with Ezra. And we'll be showing the debate live, and then we'll also be catching up with our journalists on the ground. And our live stream coverage, Sheila, as you know, starts at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. So tune in and you'll see the fireworks to follow later. Yes, very exciting. I'm very, very exciting. That's why I might not be hosting with you on Thursdays, because I have that whirlwind trip to Toronto and back. Right. Julian Borges gives us $5. How do you foresee the lockdown unfolding from here, except schools to reopen? Expect schools to reopen come September. You know, an uneducated populace is ripe for manipulation. I think already in Alberta, they're sort of musing about keeping us in lockdown or re-entering a more stricter lockdown, which is crazy. because we're doing more testing than ever. So of course you're going to catch more positive tests. Hospitalizations aren't really spiking. I mean, never once has a hospital been overwhelmed. There are protocols that you can take in school to prevent infections, and I wish they had done it sooner because my kids have had snotty noses for the last 10 years. So, you know, I just don't see how businesses are going to accept going back into a more strict lockdown. And I think parents have completely had it, and they can sort of see through what the teachers unions are trying to do here. They would like to not be working and still be getting paid, while parents who are locked down are not and stuck with kids at home, and kids want to go back to school and see their friends.
Exactly. And let's not forget the demographic angle, Sheila. I know in Ontario, I'm sure it's the same in Alberta, I don't think there's a single person that has died of the Wuhan virus under 20 in this province. And yet, look where the major part of the problem is. 82% of the deaths in Canada, Sheila, elderly people at long-term care residences. They become death traps. These are very elderly people with respiratory problems, with other kinds of ailments. This is what the Wuhan virus feasts on, not young, healthy people. And you're quite right, too. Oh, well, but look at the positive tests. They're spiking. It's the United States of infections. When you're doing over 50 million tests, more than anyone else, of course the infections are spiking. But what the mainstream media doesn't report are the death rates, which are not spiking. So, get the kids back to school already. They should be in summer camp here, too, but they're not. Well,
and as you rightly point out, the numbers do get skewed by the elderly. For example, in Alberta here, we've had over 175, it might be 178. Don't quote me on that. It's in the 170s. Infections come from one long-term extended care facility. Just one.
That's par for the course.
And over the weekend, like over the course of 3 days, I think it was 8 people died. What they don't tell you is that 5 of them were from this single extended care facility where they have such a terrible outbreak that the Alberta Health Services had to move in and take it over. And I think 4 of them were in their 90s and 1 was in their 80s. So, what has that got to do with keeping kids out of school? What does that have to do with anything?
100%.
Okay, let's keep going. Julian Borges gives us $2. It says BLM, a wolf in sheep's clothing. Make no mistake. I don't even think they're in sheep's clothing. I think they're in Marxist clothing, and they're just proudly wearing their Che Guevara shirts. It's not like they're hiding anything. Julian Borges was Joseph McCarthy in the right. Was he in the right that Hollywood was rife with Marxists and we probably should have been paying closer attention to it? Yes. Should they have been fired? I don't know. Probably not. It's, people have freedom to have political views. But was the overarching theory of McCarthy right? Yeah. And we're seeing that play out now. Hillary Waugh, $5. Did you see the doctor's press briefing at the Supreme Court in the U.S. dispelling the truth about viruses? All social platforms were banned as it didn't fit the narrative. This actually, I think Breitbart reported on it. Oh, great. Thank you, Justin, for bringing that up. Yeah, Breitbart reported on how that press briefing, I guess it would have been a press briefing by that one doctor who said, look, this is what is helping my patients, that was censored across media platforms. And I think Donald Trump Jr. was actually kicked off Twitter, suspended from Twitter. I don't know if he's back up yet because he tweeted that video. So that's the extent to which they really want to control the narrative. And I mean, what is she saying? She's saying what? Hydroxychloroquine is an effective treatment? Well, yeah, we all know that. So, and that's what they're using to treat people. So why are we censoring that information? It's information that's everywhere. I mean, it's information, and this is coming from a doctor.
Sheila, it's yet again another case of how these social justice warriors, social media companies in Silicon Valley are playing with fire when they start this overt censorship, especially in a country that has the First Amendment. I think and let's pray that Donald Trump does get reelected, one of the first things on his agenda is to take a look at the antitrust aspects of these social media giants, the way they're acting. If the U.S. government, more than 100 years ago, could break up Standard Oil into, I think it was 31 or 33 companies based on the antitrust legislation, they have even more empowerment to do so based on the fact that they are, what they have in their quiver is the First Amendment. And I know, what the First Amendment really means is the government getting involved in curtailing of freedom of speech. But the framers of the Constitution, of these amendments, they could never have foreseen a media landscape with this kind of, if not a monopoly, an oligopoly, where they all think in lockstep and they're all providing one narrative. I think it's a hell of a court case they would have. And when you start, kicking off people like Donald Trump Jr. and censoring a news item like this and fact-checking the president, et cetera, like I said, Sheila, they are playing with fire. Well,
and the United States, to some extent, I think its birth was created by the availability of the printing press.
Yeah.
That people could have their say and they could do it from a printing press and they could pamphlet their ideas all around. So imagine if at the time the manufacturers of these printing presses said, oh, you can buy this printing press, but you can only publish pro-British information on it. That's the overlay from then to now. And that's how it's happening. And so the founders would never have stood for that. They would have disobeyed it. Yep. And I think that's what should happen now.
I agree.
Okay, I think we have one last super chat.
Okay.
And then I think we should get to Jonathan Yaniv.
Absolutely.
We must. Okay, Not a Bad Account gives us $1.99. If the War of 1812 continued today, who would win? Is this a serious question? Is this a real question? Because I think your question has two aspects at this point. Who would win today? Definitely not Canada. And who would I want to win? I'm not sure. I'm not sure anymore. David, though, I think we should go into Jonathan Yaniv.
Indeed, because it's getting some traction on the website, and it's an absolutely fantastic, albeit creepy and unnerving story, Sheila. In fact, I didn't really believe it when I was first tipped off, nor did the boss. He thought this was fog. But I'll give you a backstory of what happened a week ago Saturday. Our colleague, Kian Bexty, was tipped off by a reliable source that Jonathan Yaniv was flying all the way, or driving, I'm not sure how he got here, to Toronto from Vancouver, so right across the country, based on the false premise that there was a woman who was bringing her child to Sick Kids Hospital. And in the chatter, in the communications they had with one another, this woman said, do not come to Toronto, do not come to the hospital. But apparently the idea that there was a little girl who was confined to a hospital bed was just so irresistible for Yaniv. And think about it, Sheila. This person that is communicating with Yaniv never spoke to him on the phone, never showed a video. Yaniv was going on one photograph. So both the mother and the child, thank God, do not exist. And this is what's known as being catfished. And Jonathan Yaniv fell for it, hook, line, and stinker. We found out which hotel he was staying in, and it was the Pantages Hotel. And I went down there and I staked out the hotel for a couple of hours. And here is what unfolded. Oh, Jonathan Yaniv. What brings you to Toronto?
I knew it.
What brings you to Toronto?
I knew it was you.
Have you been catfished? Why were you going to a hotel to meet a minor? Huh?
Can you call 911?
Oh, absolutely. Call 911 if you want.
Yeah.
So, Jonathan, why were you going to a hospital here?
I knew it. Just back here. Just back here.
Jonathan, are you still stalking minors?
Just back here.
Are you still stalking minors?
What do you go? You have to leave a space.
Oh, I do?
There is a six.
Or what, you're going to ram your iPad into my neck again? Mama Yaniv.
There is a six.
So, Jonathan, what brings you to
You
Toronto?
cannot come.
You flew all the way to Toronto from British Columbia to stalk a child? What?
Crazy.
Why are you going to a hospital to meet somebody you've never met?
It's none of your business.
It's none of my
No,
business?
it's not.
Why are you aiding and abetting this person?
I don't hear you.
You understand?
Huh?
You understand that you're going to be arrested.
Oh, am I? Oh, for,
you will.
for practicing journalism?
You will be.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I need police immediately at 200 Victoria Street.
Yeah. Jonathan, why are you preying on minors?
Why are you calling Jonathan when you know she's a girl?
Oh,
Why
you just
are you calling him Jonathan?
You
Why
just
are
used-
you discriminating against the transgender?
you just said
Why
he and
are
him.
Why are you humiliating?
You just said he and
Why
him.
are you humiliating? You know exactly
But
what
you just
her
used the
name
male
is.
pronouns.
You know what her name is.
You just used the male pronouns. You know.
You know what her name is. You
So
know what the name
why is he preying on minors?
You're not going to embarrass him.
Yes.
You don't come close to
Huh?
him. You know me.
You,
You're not coming
oh, you just called him him.
Go away. Go away from me.
You
You're
just
not
called him
going-
him.
Go away.
I'm not touching
Go
you.
away from
I'm not touching
right
you.
now.
I'm on a public sidewalk,
I'm
sir.
not touching you.
With COVID restrictions, I'm asking you nicely.
Yeah, I'm walking backwards. You're walking towards me.
You don't have a right to harass us.
Just go away.
Ma'am, this is a predator.
You don't have a right.
They're walking to me. Why did you travel 3,000 miles to meet a minor at Sick Kids Hospital?
You can blah, 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 blah. Blah.
I know,
Blah.
yeah.
You are blah, blah,
It's called
blah,
freedom of speech.
Blah, 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 blah,
Yeah,
blah.
it is called freedom of
Blah,
speech.
Blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
Her name is Jessica.
What kind of genitalia does he have?
What the is your problem? What kind of genitalia do I have? Are you
You prey upon immigrant women who run spa services.
Can you lock the doors? Put all the stuff in and lock the doors.
Yeah.
Come in.
Okay. Oh, you're the doorman now?
Come in.
You're not coming in here.
Are you flying back to Vancouver now?
What the is your problem?
I'm on a sidewalk, sir. I'm just asking questions. Let's see.
Oh, you have no right.
What right do you have?
What right do you have to go into my stuff?
You what? I'm not filming your stuff. It's on a public sidewalk.
Get away
What?
from
No, because
us.
you.
You're gonna get arrested.
Oh, for what? Asking questions? For practicing journalism? Why are you in Toronto? You're very far from home. Oh, you forgot your toilet paper and some other.
Don't you dare touch my.
Do you know you've been catfished? Somebody talked about having a child at Sick Kids Hospital and you flew all the way to Toronto to meet someone that doesn't exist?
Get in.
Jonathan, why are you here? Do you know you've been...
About 2 seconds.
Do you know you...
Oh, Sheila, so much to dissect. First of all, the relationship of those two, there's a reality show, I've never watched it, but I've seen it advertised called Smothered, and it's typically about the relationship of a mother and her daughter, and that the mother is all controlling. And there's something about that vibe here. I never thought of it at the time, by the way. You notice when their bag fell open on the sidewalk and you saw the roll of toilet paper and other toiletries, right? And it clicked in later that, well, of course, they were stealing that from the hotel. I mean, that's not a roll of toilet paper you would buy at a store. They come in 6 packs or 24 packs, what have you. It's a single cellophane wrap. It's for industrial use. So they were ripping off.
No kidding.
I know. Well, that's the other thing. Wow, has Jonathan really blimped up during the pandemic? Or although I'm almost expecting him to tweet out that he's in the 3rd trimester because Sheila, months ago, remember he tweeted out from a pool that he couldn't go swimming because he was on his first period, right? The biological wonder that he is. But at the end of the day, and by the way, I should tell you, we had an eyewitness come forward. I told this to the police. They didn't care. The reason why 2 police cruisers got there so fast, that comes later in the video, is Jonathan Yaniv, yet again, made a false police report. He said I had a handgun and I was threatening him and his mother. That, to me, you should do some time, because that's what got the cops there within minutes, whereas a typical harassment call, I think, in Toronto is at least 45 minutes before a cruiser will show up. But what I'm leading up to, Sheila, is that, say this is true. Say that Jonathan Yaniv was catfished. He thought there was a woman that he was going to get into a relationship with who had a daughter, a little girl, in a hospital bed that in privacy he could be beside and do God knows what. Because we know from his social media chatter he has harassed and preyed upon young minors before. Here's the thing. If I had that kind of awful criminal fetish, and I was going to fly 3,000 miles to gratify that fetish, Sheila, would I bring my mother along with me? This is the unbelievable thing, that he thinks that this is so natural to carry out such a grotesque act, that bringing dear old mom along, hey, why not? We can go see Casa Loma and the CN Tower while we're there. What are your thoughts, Sheila?
Oh God, I've got so much stuff written down. Like I said earlier, I think in a different time when we still had leaded gasoline and leaded paint chips affecting our cognitive abilities as a society, a guy like him, cross-dressed and enabled by an overbearing mother, and he would have a menagerie of women in holes in his basement. That's what I think. Secondarily, as a mom, I have an adult child. He's mostly an adult, he's old enough to be an adult. And then I think about my own mom. I would be doing everything I could to rein in a child like that. And I know my mom would be too. My mom would not hop on a flight with me if I said, hey, mom, I'm flying across the country, to just leave aside the child stuff, to meet my prospective future spouse that I've never met, want to come, my mom would say, get the net.
Or get the gun.
I would do the exact same thing to my kid too. If my son said, Mom, I'm going to meet this girl I've never met, it's in Toronto. Sure. I'll drive. I'll get you in the car and I'll take you straight to the hospital and I'll have you committed. I wouldn't be a party to this. And Mommy Yaniv is in there like a dirty shirt. And lastly, and I cannot stress how dangerous this was for you. When you tell the police that you have somebody there with a handgun in Toronto, David, you're lucky you didn't get shot when you were trying to reach into your pocket to give the cops your ID or whatever. That's swatting, I think is the word that they use on the internet for this sort of thing, to get the SWAT team called on you. And then it's basically murder by cop, because the cops are reacting to the information they have and they think you have a handgun. And so they're going to do everything they can to preserve the lives of themselves and the people around you, acting on the information that you have a handgun. David, it seems as though he tried to get you killed by a cop that day.
Oh, 100%, Sheila. Yet what bothers me is, yet again, Jonathan Yaniv slides. No,
yeah.
The cops don't charge him with making a false police report. The cops were completely uninterested in going to Sick Kids Hospital to follow up if these two maniacs tried to get into the hospital to, look for this child, like I said, thank God, who doesn't exist. And let's face it, Sheila, the reason why the judicial system, the police, the mainstream media are letting this slide is the trans card. I, for one, don't believe in the slightest this man, and I'll say it, man, like in that Austin Powers movie, it's a man, right? I don't believe he is serious about transitioning. He's keeping his male genitalia. That was the basis for more than a dozen British Columbia Human Rights Tribunal complaints, where he put some immigrant women running spa services out of their houses out of business because he demanded that they wax his male genitals. And also, I don't think he's interested in losing that part of his anatomy, because when he is going after minors, they tend to be female. So why, it's as though, I mean, he's trying to give the impression that he's transitioning into, I don't know, a lesbian, a mature woman that likes other women, but he wants to look like a woman, I think, so he gets access into change rooms, into bathrooms, into, hospital rooms where there might be a minor girl, because that's a woman, and there will be no, improper behavior going on. I think he is a vile predator. And if not for playing this trans card, if this was just a white heterosexual male who was a pedophile, everybody would be coming down on him, from the media to the justice system. But you play the trans card, that's right now at the top of the human rights pyramid, Sheila, and you are home free.
Well, for him, it's easier and more protected than going into the Boy Scouts if you wanted access to kids, or going into the priesthood, or becoming a hockey coach, or a Girl Guide leader, or whatever. This is his way to disarm vulnerable women who know if they speak up, they're going to be called transphobic, right? Like, that's his thing. But I don't know if I'm ashamed to say that I noticed this, or if I feel good about being so eagle-eyed. But as Jonathan Yaniv is wearing his, I don't know, two-piece catsuit, bike shorts, whatever he is wearing, when he's like reaching up and like waving his arm around, I noticed that he does not have the commitment to body hair removal here that he does south of the border, which leads me to believe that it wasn't about waxing or gender affirming aesthetics or whatever. It was just because he wanted to force vulnerable women to touch his junk. Like, I already knew that, but when I noticed that, he's not all uptight about shaving his armpits like most women are, most normal women are. Like, we like to be whatever. He doesn't do that to his armpits. He only wanted someone to wax his junk, which leads me to believe that it's simply about using the strong arm of the state to force vulnerable women to fondle his genitals.
That is a great observation, Sheila. It doesn't take anyone of any gender any trouble at all to shave one's armpits. I mean, waxing, that's a different kettle of fish. But you're right. This was all about harassment and gaming the Human Rights Tribunal for cash. And I don't think, unless there were certain media outlets, ourselves included, if we didn't shine a light on this guy, I am pretty sure that the BC Human Rights Tribunal would have actually investigated these cases to the fullest extent and even awarded this guy damages. But because this became an international issue, they were forced to back into a corner. And I believe it was 3 cases offered the defendants, and this is really unheard of, $2,000 in damages, so $6,000 in total, which I believe Jonathan Yaniv has not paid. Whoa, surprise, surprise. I guess if you're stealing toilet paper at the Pantages Hotel, because Sheila, you never know if the flight is going to be diverted to Venezuela, right? That might come in handy there, right? But anyways, we got to get to some super chats, I believe.
We do have to get to a few super chats, but I am very proud to say that my theory that problematic women, fake or otherwise, don't shave their armpits. It's just how it goes. There are probably some nice ladies out there who don't shave their armpits either, but all the problematic ones, they're letting it run wild.
You're right.
Okay. Okay, Road Warrior 2 gives us $5 Canadian. The problem is all the ancient vampires in power are deathly afraid of the virus themselves, and therefore we must be burdened with the lockdown. That, or all the ancient vampires have been biding their time for their moment of power, and now they have it, and they don't want to let it go. MEC gives us $2. Lower Mainland banks ask why you need to see a teller Because, of course, they do. You know, I don't understand why I'm paying banking fees when I'm talking to a robot 99% of the time. I don't understand. You know, if they said, Sheila, exclusively use the teller, we're going to get rid of all your bank fees, do all your banking online, I would. But at this point, I'm just using the teller for spite because I just want to get my money's worth out of the bank because I'm paying them all these service fees anyways. Julian Borges gives us $5. Not long ago, this degree of lunacy was non-existent. Think about it. How many more people are claiming these fringe identities? This is not a coincidence. Could the movie Silence of the Lambs be made today?
Oh, no.
Definitely not. Because you couldn't paint this very troubled individual as a maniacal homicidal maniac, which I think Jonathan Yaniv would be if he didn't have this human rights business as an outlet for his identity.
Yeah, Silence of the Lambs, we're going back 1990, 1991. You may as well go back to the Stone Age in terms of the political correctness timeline. But no, it would be condemned as being transphobic because there's no such thing, obviously, as a trans person who is also a criminal. And but you know what? There was a really funny commentator on the Yaniv segment, Sheila, who said, you know, yikes, Jonathan Yaniv makes Buffalo Bill look like a Ford model.
Well, and Buffalo Bill is actually based on Ed Gein, who made like outfits of ladies and like parts of ladies. Like it's not transphobic to say that, yeah, we based this guy on Ed Gein and it's a real thing. It's a real problem. Again, I have theories about lead paint, but I mean also, anyways, let's just keep going. Road Warrior 2 gives us $5 Canadian. She's like Jazz's mother from I Am Jazz. I think we're referring to Mama Yaniv. Jewish mother stereotype kicked up to 11. As Howard Wallace's mom wanted him to transition. Didn't she take her hearing aid out so that she could yell at you, but she couldn't hear you?
Yeah, at one point she takes her hearing aid out and just goes blah, 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 blah. And that's
I wish.
Great video.
Yeah. Julian Borges gives us $2 Canadian. Phony terms like transphobe are just pejoratives. I don't know. There's a lot of made up words making their way into our language that people are using these days. And I think we're all caught up and we have 3 minutes left in the show. David, what's next on our list?
Everything that we didn't get.
I
know. Well, I believe, Sheila, you wanted to weigh in on the two Michaels, did you not?
Yes. So, wow. I'm very proud of how far we've gotten on this. So the two Michaels, we have a campaign to do what the Canadian government could have done 600 days ago. And what they should have done 600 days ago, and that is to lodge a human rights complaint with the United Nations over the treatment and the arbitrary incarceration, really kidnapping, political prisoner, of Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig. The Chinese government snatched them up in response to Canada just doing what we're supposed to do, and that's upholding a treaty we have with the United States when we arrested Meng Wanzhou, I think is her name, the Huawei princess, who is accused of bank fraud. We caught her going through the Vancouver airport. She's wanted in the United States. I mean, we have these treaties so that you can't just run to Canada. And so we get all the American criminals just landing in Canada and that's it, right? So it keeps the criminals out of Canada if they know they're going to get arrested if they come here and turn back over to the United States authorities. So we did what we're supposed to do and not act as a safe haven for people on the run from American justice. And we arrested her and we've held her comfortably. She's on house arrest. She wears an ankle bracelet, poor thing, and she's in a multi-million-dollar house. Yep. Well, in response to that, the two Michaels were arrested in China. They've been held in a dark, dank Chinese prison. I can't think of a much worse place to be on the face of planet Earth. They've only recently been charged with espionage. So imagine being held for like 600 days. in a terrible prison cell. We really don't have a lot of proof of life coming from these guys. And they've just been charged with espionage. We don't even know what the basis is for those charges are. And as Ezra points out, the two Michaels weren't captured in a legal arrest.
Yep.
And they're held in a room where the lights are never turned off. That's a form of torture. And so we are trying to do something. We're filing this human rights complaint with the United Nations, and the United Nations is then compelled to act. And it'll do two things. It's going to shame the Canadian government into maybe doing more. And secondarily, it's going to create, hopefully, international outrage that might put pressure on the Chinese to let them go, or at least improve their conditions.
And so they should be shamed, Sheila. I really fear for the well-being and the mental health of the two Michaels. 600 days in a cell where, as you mentioned, the light bulb never goes off 24/7. I can only imagine what the quality of food has been. I'll tell you, one weekend would be enough to break me. 600 days, and far from putting any pressure on getting the two Michaels released. What did we see? Was it last month or the month before? China all of a sudden wants to break the contract with the Calgary Zoo for their pandas. We want them back. We don't care that they spend $1 million on a panda enclosure. We don't care it has 3 more years to run. Allegedly, Trudeau said something nice in a faux pas on his part about Taiwan. So we want our pandas back. If I'm Prime Minister, I go, you want your pandas back? Give us our citizens back, and then we'll talk, instead of getting an express plane set up to send them over. This is atrocious. This is such gutless leadership. Yep. And obviously, to Justin Trudeau, pandas are more important than people.
We've actually hired one of the top international human rights lawyers to draft our complaint. We think his legal fees are going to be about $15,000 plus, travel. And we'd love to send a journalist to the UN and maybe scrum some of these Chinese officials. And ask them, why, and they won't answer, but ask them, why are you arbitrarily holding these two Canadians? So if people want to help us, help the two Michaels, because that's really all we want to do.
100%.
We want to raise their international profile. They can go to freethetwomichaels.com, and you can see, you can make a one-time donation or a monthly donation to our cause there. Again, sadly, some of the people who've been the loudest on this file have been the people who are also persecuted and held arbitrarily by the Chinese, and that's the Uyghur community, have really rallied around the two Michaels. And we need to do more, and we're going to do more. So again, if you want to help us, that's freethetwomichaels.com.
It's a despicable story, and it's almost as though with the mainstream media, these two individuals have been forgotten. But we are not forgetting them, that's for sure. Sheila, I understand a couple more super chats under the wire.
Yes, I think we just have one. Road Warrior 2 gives us $5. Did the Rebel ever do a story on John Money, whose disgusting experiments on Canadian twins formed the basis for modern gender theory? I watched a documentary on that, Dr. Mengele, and the damage he did to some of his patients. Long-lasting, lifelong damage to them, raising them in other genders just to see if it's nature versus nurture, and just using people like lab rats, children like lab rats, actually. So yeah, I haven't, but I'm well aware of who he is and his work. And I think we're 3 minutes past the hour.
That was a real upbeat anecdote to end the show on, Sheila. So I'll look into that. I'm very interested in that. Well, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Mr. Producer and, of course, my lovely co-host, Sheila Gunn-Reid. And a super special thank you to all the super chatters. That's what keeps the lights on here, your donations. And I know this is a terrible time to ask for money, given the economic carnage thanks to the Wuhan virus. But you always come through for us. So thank you so much again. Ezra will be here tomorrow, and we'll be back here in this chair on, maybe. Mr. Producer, Saved by the Bell. A couple more super chats, Sheila. We dare not ignore those. Just one, actually.
Just one. Road Warrior 2 gives us $5 Canadian. I wouldn't expect the anointed Viceroy Trudeau of the Canadian colonies to go against his Emperor Xi Jinping. Yeah. I still regret that they didn't let me eat those pandas. They would have been delicious.
Well, we don't have to go that far. But again, China is the basic type of dictatorship that our Prime Minister admires. And of course, nobody in the media party will ever ask that question of him, Sheila, in one of those 11 a.m. scrums. Do you still admire this dictatorship given the economic carnage, the death toll to the world this year alone? No, let's pretend he never said such a thing. Anyways, folks, we are out of time. See you again on Thursday. Have a great day and stay safe.